sitting in Washington, D.C., though, and we like to think that we have an influence on the way the rest of the world can work. So what is your assessment, though, of how we're wielding that influence? Are we doing what we should be doing? What do you think about what we are doing right now, both at home and abroad?
So what we're seeing here in the United States is a declining trend of respect for press freedom. So we've now slipped another 2 places on the index to 45 out of 180 countries, which is pretty shocking and disappointing for the country of the First Amendment. But we were already on this downward trend before our current president, took us a little bit further. So we had crackdown on whistleblowers under the Obama administration. He was tight-lipped on the messaging coming out of the White House and difficult to really be fully transparent about his administration's activities. But journalists were also getting arrested while covering protests around the country, North Dakota, but also Black Lives Matter protests. That trend has continued and worsened under Trump, but he has added this extra layer of outward hatred of journalism and media freedom and disrespect for the First Amendment that comes from his comments, calling journalists enemy of the American people, calling for certain media outlets' licenses to be revoked.
The examples Cameron gave in his opening speech.
Exactly, and we're all familiar with them. But also, when he retweets violent memes of journalists from CNN getting assaulted, and then you see physical assaults of journalists, and we had Greg Gianforte on the eve of his election to Congress in Montana assault a journalist from The Guardian, and then he won that election. So that's really shocking that someone who assaults a journalist could win an election, and it's probably because this rhetoric is coming down from the highest office in the country. So what does that mean internationally? It means that we are not setting the example that we used to set at home that might have made us more credible when we ask for other countries that are generally repressive of press freedom to respect the role of journalists in a democracy.
Have you seen that actually manifesting itself, though? I mean, we talk about we're supposed to be setting a good example, and certainly that is a noble thing to say, but have you actually seen examples of where, because as your assessment is that we're not right now, that's actually having an effect on what we're hearing coming out of other world leaders or other parts of the globe?
Yes, definitely. We've seen Erdogan in Turkey mimic Trump's remarks, as well as the Prime Minister in Cambodia. In the Philippines, Duterte and Trump have both called journalists sons of bitches. So we know that there is a correlation there. And there was also a recent story about the U.S. ambassador in Uganda trying to kind of highlight the concerns for press freedom in that country. And the press minister of Uganda basically said, your president can't even take questions at a press conference, so please don't lecture me on our press freedom here. So that's really telling. I mean, that can have a direct impact on our diplomacy efforts to encourage the release of journalists.